Karma is action that you take. And because very often people say, oh, I think I have bad karma. I had fever, or I got COVID-19. I think it must be my bad karma. No, no, no. If there was a karmic cause and you got COVID-19 because of a karmic cause, then what you are suffering from are the fruits of your karma. So do not confuse karma, which is the action you take, and the fruits of karma. Karma vikalpa it is called, and that is the fruits of karma. So now if we will come to rebirth, but if we go from lifetime to lifetime collecting these seeds of different type of tendencies, violence, hatred, anger, love, joy, whatever, they say that when you take rebirth, these karmic imprints come with you into the next life. So you may discard your body, you might even discard your gender, your gross mental formations and phenomena, but the karmic imprints come with you. So so this is a little bit about karma. And
sorry
again,
to interrupt.
yeah.
But I didn't understand when you said don't confuse karma with fruits of karma.
In terms of speaking and generalizing, so karma literally means to do something, action. Okay, action that you take is karma. And karma can be skillful, unskillful, or neutral. So if I decide now that while I'm speaking, I'd like to just sip a Coke along, that's a neutral action. Skillful, unskillful, you do something which helps others, reduces suffering, creates happiness for others, is skillful. So actions which create suffering for yourself or others, or increase suffering in others yourself, are called unskillful, and that's your karma, that you're performing that karma, you're doing that action, which will have its fruits later. So if you feel that something you're suffering from, or something you win a lottery, people say, oh, what good karma, I won a lottery. No, actually, what nice fruits of karma that you got that lottery ticket, won that. That's the only difference. But when people speak, they confuse these two concepts and label both as karma. That's all I'm talking about, language. Because then somebody may challenge you. How can this be karma? This is a neutral action. So, and so on. So,
yeah. But Asti,
yeah.
as far as I understand, karma can also be, I mean, we have action of the body, speech, and mind, right? So, intentionalities, for example, I may not hit back, but I may hold a grouse. That's one thing. So, they also count as karma, as far as I understand. And you.
So, as you know, after the Buddha's passing away, and 100, 200 years later, and when King Ashoka sent his son and daughter to spread Buddhism, they went to Sri Lanka. And okay, even one step backwards, Buddha's teachings were all oral, and they were passed on by the monks through recitation on repetitive occasions. And they had 3-4 councils in which they finalized that this is the word of the Buddha as we heard it. For 400 years, nothing was written down. And after 400 years, when it was written down in what is now called the Pali language, which is a type of vulgar Sanskrit, which so was, Magadhi, which is the language probably in which Buddha actually spoke in those days. Then 400 years later would still make it about 150 years BC. And it's only in the 2nd century that various other concepts were developed, which became the Mahayana. The main concept in the Mahayana is that a person takes a vow to be a bodhisattva, takes the bodhisattva vow, which is that although I may come to a point where I can enter nirvana and leave this cycle of birth and death, I will not do that until I have led every other sentient being into enlightenment. So you renounce nirvana itself, and you voluntarily decide to come back to this cycle of suffering to help other beings, although you have reached that stage. So this became the Mahayana school, which went to Tibet, China, and so on, from 2nd century AD, 1st, 2nd century AD. Theravada is that Pali tradition. The Theravada do not accept these Mahayana sutras. So they said, no, nothing like Bodhisattva. What Bodhisattva? Nobody can become a Buddha now. That epoch is gone. Whereas Mahayana believes each one of us can become a Buddha. So, and therefore each one can become a Buddha because we have a potential called Buddha nature within us. So now the thing that Anil is saying about how do we understand whether it is karma or it is not karma. What did the Buddha actually say in the sutra where this is explained? So the Theravadas believe that, so I'm going to tell you what the Theravadas believe. Whereas the Mahayana, many schools of Mahayana believe everything is karma. And I'll give you some examples of that. So first, the Buddha said there are 5 niyamas, means 5 sort of rules or, protocols by which we can explain certain events. So let us say that someone goes in the rain and falls sick and gets fever and cold and cough. Okay. So Buddha says, don't just jump to the conclusion this is the effect of some karma. He says first there is something called Uttu Niyama. I guess Uttu means physical inorganic order. So I go in the rain, I don't use a raincoat or umbrella, I just get, so it's physical, I'm just getting wet. It's inorganic, there is no microbe, no germ, no virus, nothing. I just get a chill and I have all these symptoms. So it's a physical inorganic order, nothing to do with karma, which Anil would accept. He'll say, yes, this is how you should explain things. Why do you jump to karma when you're talking about cold and fever? Then there is a bija niyama. Bija, of course, means seed. Physical, but not inorganic. Physical, but organic or biological. So you go out in the rain and maybe you get the influenza virus because it's in the air during that season. Okay, or you get leptospirosis or something like that, which is due because of a organism, which is biological. He says, so you have to rule out all these things. He said, before you can jump to the conclusion that it's karma, you have to rule out all these factors. Third is manoniyama, which is a non-volitional mental order. So like a person who is prone to, say, panic attacks or anxiety, or working in a very unpleasant office environment under mental tension, tension mat lena, that sort of tension layer, which is non-volitional. He doesn't want it. He's not asking for it, but he's in that environment. Everybody is hassling him or whatever, exploiting him. But it's but it's totally mental. It's nothing to do with microbes or physical or climate change or anything. Then he says dharma niyama, which is of a transcendental order. This is a little difficult to understand, but let's say that there are certain esoteric practices in many traditions, esoteric, they're not revealed to everybody. And they say, okay, you do this, and this will happen. And you just read about it or you just hear about it and you try to practice these esoteric teachings without a proper teacher or guidance. You go off your rocker sometimes. Then that's a transcendent. Let's just say that's something to do with dharma, but you're just doing something wrong, Just as you can't do yoga, complex asanas in yoga without proper guidance, you're doing some mental asanas and you're screwing up your mind, and you are in a mental state later on. So he says, if you can rule out all these 4 things, then you can say karma niyama, volitional order, something you did with volition, which has created. Now, here also, there is nothing that says that karma niyama is only across lifetimes. No, even in this lifetime. You do something criminal, volitional action now to harm somebody, you could get your comeuppance in this lifetime. You could be detected, arrested, you may go to jail for 7 years. Karma niyama is the effect of the action you did, but not coming from the past life. So the Theravada would bolster Anil's argument. They would say, and they don't talk much about rebirth. But then if you look at the Jataka tales, which are part of the Pali canon, then there the Buddha says, that night I saw all my past lives. See, that night I saw all my past lives in the first watch of the night. Then in the second watch of the night, I did this. In the third watch, I came to the conclusion. Now, you either say that's not a genuine sutra. And by the way, I asked Stephen Batchelor this question when he came to launch his latest book in the Kitabkhana bookstore in Bombay. And I got into a little argument with him. And Shantam Seth was actually the moderator. And I argued with him. He had to say on stage, you are right, Buddha did say that. Because you cannot cherry pick this sutra and that sutra. And they're all Pali sutras, because he also rejects the Mahayana sutras. They're all the Theravada sutras. And then do you know what happened, Siddharth? After the talk, when he came down from the dais, he met me and said, Aspi, I really liked your questions. And you know, I agree with everything you said. But what shall we do? You know, we have to spread Buddhism to the West. And I had to tell him, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. This is not a numbers game. I'd rather have 50 good scholars of Buddhism than 5,000 people listening to you saying Buddha did not teach rebirth. See, there is a difference between saying, I don't believe in rebirth, which is fine because the Buddha said you can reject what you don't want from my teachings. But don't mislead people by saying Buddha never taught rebirth.
Aspi, I missed that line of yours. Can you just repeat that last sentence?
So I was saying, did you hear about what I spoke to Siddharth, to Stephen Batchelor and all that?
Yes, I heard that, yes.
So my last line was, it is one thing to say that I don't believe in rebirth. Like Anil wants to reject it. You say that you have been thinking about it for many years and you are not convinced. That's fine. I can say I don't believe in rebirth. But it is false to say Buddha never taught rebirth. That is totally wrong. You can reject all of Buddhism, but you cannot say Buddha never taught anything because I am rejecting it and I don't like it. That's the difference. So we are looking at the Buddhist philosophy the way Buddha taught it. Now, what we choose to believe and what we choose to practice, that's up to us. And the Buddha has himself said, please test all my teachings the way a goldsmith tests gold. If you go to a goldsmith and say, here is gold, what's your price today? He will first test the gold before telling you anything. He's not going to say, yeah, this is gold because you're saying it's gold. So Buddha said, do the same with my teachings. So now I said, yes, now this is how the Theravada analyze cause and effect and say, well, if you eliminate these 4 causes, then you can say this is karma. Then actually even then Buddha said, then perhaps you can say this is karma. Because you are still a human being, you are just using it like a logical argument. But karma, then he said, is very, very complex. Now the Mahayana, and definitely some traditions in Mahayana, have a tendency to say everything is karma. Now how will they explain this then? So they will say, look, yes, all this is fine. You went out in the rain, correct? And you didn't have a raincoat or umbrella. That's your bad karma for some. That's your karma. You went without, so that you did some action. Secondly, then you say you defend yourself. No, but it's the middle of summer. Yes, but it's your karma that you were born in this country where it suddenly rains in the middle of summer. They actually argue this way. So finally, everything is karma. Of course, then everything is karma. Of course, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 14 because John 2 doesn't exist. So 14 people are here. Is it our karma that has brought us together for this discussion on Buddhism? Who knows? Do we have some merit to be hearing all this and for me to be speaking all this? Is it my karma that I encountered Buddhism and that I am able to, whatever extent, explain some of these things? So the Mahayana would definitely, of course, this is karma. You have to have merit before you can. Look at the animals, look at the people who are without eyes, who cannot read. You have the most fortunate human life. That is your karma. Otherwise, all this argument and all this discussion, you won't be able to discuss about rebirth if you didn't have the karma to discuss about rebirth. To encounter these teachings, therefore you can debate them. So that's the thing. Any questions now? Last, like.
I just, sorry, I'm just jumping in, but I just had a question. So if even if one takes the, it says, okay, I agree with this concept of rebirth, and I see that there is, this translation or transmission in this realm, on this life, I cannot perceive my past life. Most people can't, right? So I'm not cognitively aware. And if I'm not cognitively aware, in my daily life, I'm not able to influence my action based on these kinds of, past, karmic imprints. So then how do I, so in the case of the peon you're taking, he's still doing honest work, even though he knows he's not getting treated fairly, because at some level he believes in the idea of doing the right thing. Right? So then one has to just like believe that there is the merit of good action is just the good action itself. It's not for any ulterior benefit of my karma in the next life, right? Because there is no carrying on cognitively of this imprint, so to speak, right? So I do good work or good action in this life because I feel like that is the right or the moral thing to do, right?
Right. Definitely. And that's why, I mean, we are talking about rebirth in isolation. But now when you look at Four Noble Truths, then you come to the fourth noble truth. What is the way to that? What is the path to end of suffering? Then there's a whole prescription there, That's why the Buddha is called a great physician sometimes. He looks at the disease, he finds the cause, he tells you he can cure the disease, and he gives you a prescription. But what do most people do? With that prescription, they go and put it on the altar and sit before it and chant. So that won't cure you of anything. If your doctor tells you you take these tablets, but you think your doctor is God and you put that prescription on your altar with the doctor's picture there, you're not going to get cured. You have to put that prescription into practice. So that's the other thing. So intention and motive is extremely important.